This guy robbed the Mafia and disappeared. The year was 1978, and the place was Castelvetrano, a town in Sicily that sits about 2 hours outside of Palermo. It's here where Angelo La Barbera decided to rob one of the most powerful mafias in the entire world. But what's crazy is not what you think. Let me explain. Angelo Barbera had lived in this small town his entire life. He was a father, a husband, and an ordinary man who worked as a grocer. But he wasn't always an ordinary man. Back in the early 1970s, he was once a member of the Sicilian Mafia himself. In fact, he was part of the Corleonesi family, also known as the Corleone family. This was one of the 9 Italian-American mafia families based in New York City. These guys were dangerous and were led by none other than the boss, Tito Riina. They were so dangerous, in fact, they'd even kidnapped and murdered a judge who was trying to take down their organization. But Angelo left the mafia behind him for some reason or another and started his own grocery store. And now it's the 1970s, and one day he gets a visit from his old boss, Tito Ranieri. Now, normally if you left the mafia, you would basically be dead. Your old boss could send out a squad of men right then and there and have you whacked. So why did Tito come to see Angelo? Well, he came to enlist the help of his former underboss to kidnap and murder someone. The name of the victim was Giovanni Falcone. Now, you might be thinking, who's that? Well, he was an Italian magistrate who was also trying to bring down the mafia. He was also the godfather of Paolo Borsellino, a magistrate who would eventually be killed by the same mobsters who would kill Giovanni. If you rethinking, these mobsters must have been successful, since we've never heard of these people. Well, you'd be wrong. Giovanni Falcone was actually successful in bringing down many mafia bosses, including Tito Ranieri. That's why he had to go. But Angelo refused to participate in the plot to assassinate Falcone. Instead, he warned Falcone about the hit, which didn't make him very popular with the mafia. They threatened him, they harassed him, but he stood his ground. Then something truly shocking happened. One day, Angelo's house was firebombed. The attackers threw several Molotov cocktails at the home, but luckily everyone inside managed to escape unharmed. But after that, Angelo was done being a pacifist. He decided to take matters into his own hands. First, he went to the police and informed them of his former boss's plan to assassinate Judge Falcone. But then he did something no one saw coming. He took off. Angelo fled to Florence, Italy, where he changed his identity and started working as a shoe salesman. His wife and kids had no idea where he went. They thought he was dead. Everyone else thought he was dead. In fact, the police even launched a search for his body, but they couldn't find it anywhere. And it wasn't long before the mafia got involved in the search. They wanted to make sure that Angelo was really dead, because if he wasn't, they were going to kill him. A local mafioso named Tito Riina told the police he knew who was responsible for the attack. Apparently, there was some sort of love triangle involving Falcone's wife and another man. And so the mafia decided to kill Falcone, make his wife pay for her betrayal, and frame it all on someone else. And guess who that someone else was? You guessed it, Angelo La Barbera. So the mafia was looking for him, the police were looking for him, and Falcone's wife was looking for him, though she wasn't aware that they were looking for the same person. Anyway, the authorities started questioning just about everyone in Angelo's hometown about the whereabouts of the missing grocer, but no one had any answers. He had literally vanished without a trace. And to add insult to injury, while everyone was looking for Angelo, Falcone's wife became the victim of a brutal attack. Men with guns stormed into her house and brutally assaulted her. But still, no one found Angelo, even though he was living in plain sight. All the while, Angelo was giving interviews to newspapers in Florence, telling everyone who'd listen that he wasn't hiding. He was simply in protective custody, but no one knew who he was. And those who did know who he was didn't believe it was really him. In fact, no one believed him at all until 1983, when he finally resurfaced. After 5 years in hiding, Angelo contacted Falcone and offered to testify against the mafia. But by this point, Falcone didn't need his testimony anymore. He had already successfully brought down the mafia bosses and sentenced them to jail. But here's the thing. No one ever really knows what happens behind closed doors. We don't know what kind of deal Angelo struck with Falcone, or if he even struck a deal at all. What we do know is that after Angelo came forward, several members of the Sicilian Mafia were arrested. Then in 1993, Falcone was assassinated by the Mafia, along with 3 members of his family. And just like that, Angelo vanished again. Some say he went back into hiding, while others say he was killed by the Mafia. But there's one theory that might just make the most amount of sense. You see, Falcone's wife survived the brutal attack orchestrated by the Mafia. But when she was interviewed about the incident, she said something strange. She claimed that she wasn't sure if the attacker was a member of the Mafia. Here's what she said. "I am convinced that those who did it for Cosa Nostra, but I don't know if they were members of the Mafia or not." So the man who helped Falcone bring down the Mafia might have been an undercover agent all along. And if he was, he definitely played his part well. He put his life on the line to help bring down one of the most powerful crime organizations in the world. And then he vanished, leaving everyone wondering if he was even real or just a figment of Falcone's imagination. But we may never know the truth, because Angelo La Barbera remains missing to this very day. So what happened to him? Did the Mafia kill him? Was he an undercover agent? Or was he just a figment of Falcone's imagination? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to learn more about the Mafia, stay tuned for more content. And thank you for watching.